Are you still afraid of losing yourself? No, not anymore.
You're still here? Daniel asked as he walked into the garage. It's almost midnight. I wiped grease from my hands and forced a smile. Transmission needed extra work. No, he said. You needed extra money? I laughed quietly. Maybe. Daniel leaned against the toolbox. 3 years, Ethan. Most guys would have given up already. I'm close now, I said. 1 more month. He stared at me for a second. You really love her that much? I looked down at the old photo taped inside my locker. Claire was smiling beside me at the county fair, holding cotton candy against my face while I pretended to look annoyed. Yeah, I said softly. I really do. For almost 3 years I worked every overtime shift the garage offered. I skipped vacations, sold my old motorcycle, and ate cheap instant noodles more nights than I could count. Every dollar went into the same hidden savings account. The ring. Everything was for the ring. Every exhausting night felt worth it because I kept imagining Claire saying yes. Daniel opened the fridge and grabbed a soda. You know something bothers me? What? She stopped posting pictures with you. I shrugged. Claire barely uses social media now. That's not true, he replied. I saw her post brunch photos yesterday. She just likes privacy. Daniel gave me a look that said he didn't believe me. Okay. I hated when people questioned my relationship. It made me feel defensive immediately, like I had to protect Claire even when she wasn't around. When I got home later that night, Claire was curled on the couch wearing one of my hoodies. You smell like engine oil again, she teased. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's terrible, she laughed. I kissed her forehead and dropped beside her. The exhaustion in my body disappeared whenever she smiled at me. How was work? I asked. Boring, she muttered while staring at her phone. Her screen lit up again. She turned it away quickly before I could see it. Secret boyfriend? I joked. Claire smirked. Maybe. I laughed with her, but something about the way she hid the screen stayed in my head longer than it should have. The next Sunday, Mia came over for dinner. She watched Claire texting under the table before leaning toward me in the kitchen. She's acting weird, Mia whispered. She's answering work messages. During dinner? She works with annoying people. Mia crossed her arms. You always defend her. Because you always attack her. I'm trying to protect you. I sighed. You don't understand Claire the way I do. Mia looked disappointed. Maybe that's the problem. Dinner became awkward after that. Claire barely spoke and kept checking her phone every few minutes. Later that night, while Mia helped me wash dishes, she asked quietly, When's the last time Claire looked excited about your future together? She does all the time. You sure? I dried a plate slowly. Why is everybody acting like my relationship is falling apart? Because you look more worried every month. I didn't answer her. The truth was, I had noticed small changes too. Claire smiled less whenever marriage came up. She changed the subject every time I talked about apartments, weddings, or long-term plans. But whenever I looked scared, she always pulled me close and whispered the same thing. Don't worry so much, Ethan. We have time. And every single time I believed her. 2 weeks later, I finally bought the ring. My hands actually shook when the jeweler placed the black box in front of me. Beautiful choice, the woman said warmly. I opened the box carefully. The diamond caught the light instantly. For a second I couldn't breathe. I imagined slipping it onto Claire's finger. I imagined her crying. I imagined finally feeling enough. That night, I hid the ring box inside my jacket pocket and walked into our apartment smiling like an idiot. Claire sat near the window, typing on her phone with a strange little smile on her face. You look happy, I told her. She locked the screen immediately. Just talking to someone. I sat beside her carefully, my heart racing because the ring was still inside my pocket. Who texted you? She glanced at me for half a second before smiling softly. Nobody you need to worry about. I touched the ring box through my jacket and tried ignoring the strange feeling growing inside my chest. Claire rested her head against my shoulder like nothing was wrong, but her fingers kept tightening around her phone. I wanted to ask more questions. I wanted to know why everybody around me seemed worried except me. Instead, I kissed the top of her head and stayed quiet. Love made silence feel easier than truth during every single night lately alone. I spent almost an hour choosing a shirt that night. Relax, Daniel said over the phone. You're proposing marriage, not attending a funeral. You don't get it, I replied while fixing my collar in the mirror. Everything has to be perfect. You already bought the ring. That's the hard part. I smiled nervously. What if she says no? She won't. I wanted to believe him. The restaurant overlooked the river downtown. Claire once told me it looked beautiful at night when the city lights reflected across the water. Before leaving the apartment, I checked the ring box again. Still there. Still real. My hands shook as I slipped it into my jacket pocket. Then my phone rang. Claire. I answered immediately. Hey, where are you? Her voice sounded rushed. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Something happened at work. My stomach dropped. Tonight. I know this looks bad, but my manager is freaking out right now. Can't somebody else handle it? I wish. She sighed. Please don't be mad. I forced myself to stay calm. I'm not mad. I'll make it up to you. It is okay, I lied. After the call ended, I sat in my car staring at the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to drive home immediately, but another part refused to let the night die so easily. I already reserved the table. I already imagined proposing there 100 times. So I went anyway. The hostess smiled politely when I entered. Table for two? Actually, I said quietly, just one tonight. I sat near the back corner beside the windows. Couples laughed around me while soft music played overhead. A waiter approached. Can I start you with a drink? Whiskey. Rough night? You could say that. I kept checking my phone, hoping Claire would text me something sweet or apologetic. Nothing came. Then I heard her laugh. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But when I turned my head slightly, my chest tightened instantly. Claire sat across the room near the bar. She wore the black dress I loved most. And she wasn't alone. The man beside her looked older than me, confident, expensive, calm. Claire leaned toward him while smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. No, I whispered to myself. No, there's an explanation. Maybe it was business. Maybe it was a client. Maybe I was overthinking everything like Mia always claimed. Then I saw Claire place her hand over his. My entire body went cold. The waiter returned with my drink. Sir? I barely heard him. Yeah, thanks. I couldn't stop staring. The man noticed me first. His expression never changed. He simply studied me before taking another sip of wine. Claire followed his gaze. The second our eyes met, all color disappeared from her face. She pulled her hand away immediately. I stood up so fast my chair nearly fell backward. Claire whispered something to the man before rushing toward me. Ethan, she said breathlessly. Why are you here? I laughed weakly. That's actually a really good question. It's not what you think. Then tell me what I'm thinking. She grabbed my arm tightly. Can we please go outside? Who is he? Please. People had already started staring. Before I answered, another woman walked past our table laughing with friends. And my world stopped. The ring on her finger looked exactly like the one hidden inside my jacket pocket. Same diamond. Same silver band. Same shape. I felt physically sick. Claire noticed where I was looking. Ethan? You gave her my ring? Her eyes widened. What? The ring? I whispered. You gave it away? No. Then why is she wearing it? You're not making sense. I looked back toward the man sitting calmly near the bar. He finally stood and walked toward us slowly. Claire, he said smoothly, is everything okay? She looked terrified now. Ryan, please. So this was Ryan. He extended his hand toward me casually. Ryan Mercer. I ignored it. He smiled slightly anyway. I'm guessing you're Ethan. The way he said my name made me feel small. Why does he know who I am? I asked Claire. Ethan, please listen to me. Ryan adjusted his jacket calmly. Claire told me you were emotional. My fists tightened immediately. Claire stepped between us. Stop it, Ryan. He raised his hands innocently. I'm trying to help. Help? I snapped. You're on a date with my girlfriend. Claire looked close to tears. Can we please talk outside? I finally nodded because I couldn't breathe inside that restaurant anymore. The cold night air hit my face hard the second we stepped onto the sidewalk. Claire grabbed both my hands desperately. You misunderstood everything. I stared at her silently. I swear I can explain. Then explain. Tears filled her eyes instantly. And somehow, against every warning screaming inside my head, I still wanted to believe her. Claire's voice broke as she leaned closer to me. If you love me, she whispered through tears, you'll trust me one last time. Claire barely let me out of her sight after the restaurant. She kissed me constantly, held my hand during movies and whispered, I love you, so often it started sounding rehearsed. But every time I asked direct questions, she escaped them smoothly. Why did Ryan know my name? I asked one night. He met me through work. Why were you holding his hand? She sighed dramatically. Ethan, I was nervous. Nervous enough to lie to me? I didn't lie. You canceled our dinner. Because I had to meet him. Alone? It was business. Nothing about it felt like business. 3 days later, Daniel cornered me at the garage. You're still with her? He asked. I kept working under the hood of a truck. Mind your business. I'm minding my business. You're my best friend. I slammed the wrench down harder than I meant to. Then stop acting like you know everything. Daniel stared at me for a long moment. I saw her again. My stomach tightened. Where? At Ryan Mercer's apartment building. I forced a laugh. Maybe she had another meeting. At 11 at night? I stayed silent. She's playing you, Ethan. Shut up. I'm serious. I said shut up. The garage became painfully quiet after that. That night, Claire wrapped her arms around me the second I walked inside the apartment. You smell stressed, she whispered. I had a long day. You worked too hard. Her fingers slid slowly across my chest while she kissed my neck gently. A month ago, I would have melted instantly. Now my brain kept replaying the restaurant. Ryan's calm smile. Claire's panic. That ring. You're thinking again, Claire said softly. Can you blame me? She looked hurt immediately. I thought we moved past this. How? Because I explained everything. You actually didn't. Claire stepped back slowly. So you don't trust me anymore? I wanted to answer honestly. Instead I said, I'm trying. The next afternoon, Mia showed up at the garage carrying coffee. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. I'm serious. You haven't slept, have you? I shrugged. She lowered her voice. I checked Claire's social media. Mia. Listen first. I crossed my arms reluctantly. She blocked specific people from seeing certain posts. What does that even mean? It means she's hiding things. Mia, stop investigating my girlfriend like a criminal. She acts like one. I rubbed my forehead tiredly. I don't need this right now. You need the truth. The word truth stayed in my head all day. That evening, Claire invited me to dinner with her friend Emma Lewis. Emma looked nervous the second I sat down. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. Claire smiled too brightly beside me. Emma thinks we should all take a vacation together. Emma nearly choked on her drink. I noticed immediately. Something wrong? I asked. No, Emma replied quickly. Claire squeezed Emma's arm under the table. I caught the movement. The conversation became painfully awkward after that. Finally, while Claire went to the restroom, Emma leaned toward me nervously. Ethan, she whispered, maybe you should. Claire returned suddenly. Emma stopped talking immediately. I looked between them. Maybe I should what? Emma stared down at her plate. Nothing. Claire forced a laugh. Emma's been stressed lately. Right? Emma said softly. Fear. I saw real fear in her face. Later that night, I couldn't sleep beside Claire. I kept remembering old moments I once ignored. The hidden phone screen. The canceled plans. The sudden overtime shifts. Every lie suddenly felt connected. Around midnight, Claire's phone buzzed again. She grabbed it instantly and walked into the hallway. Something inside me finally snapped. The next evening, I parked across the street from Claire's office and waited. You're insane, I muttered to myself. But I stayed anyway. At 6:30, Claire walked outside wearing a dark coat and looking around carefully before entering a black car. I followed them through downtown traffic with shaking hands gripping the steering wheel. Please don't let this be real. Please. The car finally stopped outside Ryan Mercer's building. I watched Claire step out slowly. Then I watched her walk directly into Ryan's penthouse elevator and kiss him before the doors closed. I sat frozen inside my car after the elevator disappeared. My chest hurt, I could barely breathe. Part of me wanted to run upstairs and scream. Another part still searched for excuses, desperate to believe there was explanation strong enough to save what remained of my life. I stayed parked outside Ryan Mercer's building long after the elevator doors closed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every few minutes I told myself to drive away. Instead, I kept staring at the glowing penthouse windows above me like an idiot waiting for his own execution. She loves you, I whispered weakly. But another voice inside me answered immediately. No, she doesn't. I leaned forward against the steering wheel, struggling to breathe properly. My chest felt tight, almost painful. I kept replaying every memory Claire and I ever shared, but now every moment looked fake. The late-night kisses. The promises. The future we planned together. All of it suddenly felt like something she performed instead of something she meant. Around midnight, my phone rang. Daniel. I ignored it. A minute later, Mia called too. I turned the phone off completely. I didn't want comfort. I wanted the truth. At almost 1 in the morning, Ryan's elevator finally opened again. Claire stepped out first. She looked exhausted until she noticed my car. Then panic covered her face instantly. Ethan, she whispered after walking toward me. What are you doing here? I stepped out slowly. I think you know. She glanced back toward the elevator nervously. You followed me? I watched you kiss him. Claire covered her face briefly. God. Tell me I imagined it. She stayed silent. Tell me. I shouted. Stop yelling. You lied to me for months. People near the valet entrance started staring. Claire lowered her voice sharply. This isn't the place. I laughed bitterly. Really? Because this seems like the perfect place. She folded her arms defensively. Ryan is complicated. I stared at her in disbelief. That's your explanation? You don't understand the situation. Then help me understand. Claire paced anxiously before finally saying, I never wanted to hurt you. The sentence hit me like a knife. Not because it sounded sincere. Because it sounded practiced. How long? I asked quietly. She looked away. A while. How long, Claire? Almost a year. I physically stepped backward. A year. An entire year of lies. A year? I repeated. I was trying to figure things out. You lived with me. I know. You slept beside me every night. I know. My voice cracked hard. Then why? Claire suddenly looked angry instead of guilty. Because being with you felt safe. The words stunned me into silence. She continued before I could speak. You're kind, Ethan. You're reliable. You make people feel comfortable. Comfortable? I whispered. But Ryan is different. I laughed once painfully. Different how? He's ambitious. So I'm not ambitious because I fix cars? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Claire rubbed her forehead tiredly. You wouldn't understand. The elevator opened again. Ryan Mercer walked outside calmly while adjusting his expensive coat. He looked between us without surprise. Everything okay? He asked casually. I moved toward him instantly. You think this is funny? Ryan barely reacted. I think you should calm down. You knew she was engaged. Ryan shrugged slightly. Claire said your relationship was basically over. I looked at Claire. You said that? Tears filled her eyes. Ethan. You said that? She was unhappy, Ryan interrupted smoothly. I turned toward him again. Stay out of this. Ryan smiled faintly. You're embarrassing yourself. The valet workers nearby kept pretending not to watch us. I felt humiliated standing there in my grease-stained work jacket while Ryan looked like he stepped out of a magazine. You think you're better than me? I asked. Ryan studied me calmly. Honestly? Yes. Claire whispered, Ryan, stop. But he didn't. You and I were never competing equally, he continued. You can barely afford rent. I own half this building. My fists tightened so hard my nails cut my skin. For years I believed hard work made me valuable. Standing there I suddenly felt small. Replaceable. Claire touched my arm carefully. Ethan, please don't do this. I pulled away immediately. No, I said quietly. I'm finally done doing this. She looked confused. What? I reached into my jacket pocket slowly and removed the small black ring box. Claire's face changed instantly. You bought it already? She whispered. I stared at the box for a second before placing it gently on the hood of her car. I was going to ask you to marry me tonight. Claire started crying harder. Ethan. But now I realize something. She wiped her face desperately. Please listen. I spent years trying to become enough for someone who never respected me. Ryan stayed silent now. For the first time all night, nobody had anything clever left to say. Claire grabbed my wrist. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did. I still care about you. I slowly pulled my hand away from hers. That's the problem, I whispered. You cared just enough to keep me around. Then I walked back to my car without looking behind me once. I called her times after that even though I hated myself for it. Every call went to voicemail. Around sunrise, I sat in my apartment staring at the space beside my bed, finally understanding how loneliness could exist even when person had been sleeping beside me for years. The next morning, I opened our banking app and discovered Claire emptied our entire shared savings account during the night. I stopped answering most phone calls after Claire emptied the account. Every morning felt heavy. I barely slept more than 2 hours at a time, and every dream somehow ended with Claire walking away from me again. Bills covered my kitchen table. Past due notices. Rent reminders. Credit card warnings. I stared at them for hours without moving. At work, everything became harder. "You almost dropped an engine on your foot," Daniel snapped one afternoon. "I'm fine." "No, you're distracted." I grabbed another wrench angrily. "Can everybody stop treating me like I'm broken?" Daniel lowered his voice. "You are broken." The truth hurt because he wasn't wrong. Later that night, Mia unlocked my apartment door using the emergency key I forgot she had. She froze immediately. "Ethan, what the hell happened here?" Clothes covered the floor. Empty food containers sat near the couch. I hadn't shaved in days. "I've been busy," I muttered. "With what? Dying slowly?" "Mia." "No," she pointed at me furiously. "You don't get to disappear into self-pity forever." I laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You think I don't see what she did to you?" "She took everything." "She took money," Mia corrected sharply. "Not your value." I looked away. Mia walked closer until I finally met her eyes. "You didn't lose your value because someone failed to see it." The sentence hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides anger. Daniel came over the next evening carrying printed bank statements. "I found something weird," he said. I frowned. "What is this?" "Transfers." I scanned the papers slowly. Small amounts of money had disappeared from our shared account for months before Claire finally emptied it completely. "She was moving money little by little," I whispered. Daniel nodded grimly. "Probably so you wouldn't notice." Every page made me feel more stupid. "She planned this," I said quietly. "Looks that way." I sat down heavily. I really trusted her. Daniel pulled another paper from his jacket. "There's more." "What now?" "Ryan Mercer's company is getting investigated." I looked up immediately. "For what?" "Investment fraud, maybe?" He shrugged. "A guy named Oliver Grant has been talking to reporters." "Who's Oliver?" "Ryan's business partner." I almost laughed at the irony. The man Claire chose over me suddenly didn't seem untouchable anymore. 3 days later, a woman arrived at the garage after a minor accident. She stepped out of a damaged blue sedan and sighed. "Please tell me this won't cost a fortune." I walked toward the car slowly. "Depends how attached you are to your bumper." She smiled faintly. "That bad?" "Not terrible." "I'm Sophia," she said while extending her hand. "Ethan." Unlike most customers, she didn't immediately start complaining about prices or timing. She simply leaned against the counter while I inspected the damage. "You look exhausted," she said gently. I blinked. "That obvious?" "You've checked the same dent 3 times." I laughed quietly for the first time in weeks. "Rough month?" she asked. "You could say that." Sophia nodded slowly. "Someone hurt you." The directness surprised me. "How can you tell?" "Because people with normal stress still sleep." I stared at her for a second before looking away. "My fiancé left," I admitted. "I'm sorry." "She stole my savings too." Sophia winced. "Okay. That's significantly worse." I expected pity. Instead, she asked softly, "What are you going to do now?" "I honestly don't know." "Well," she said calmly, "surviving seems like a good start." Something about her voice felt steady. "Say." Before leaving, Sophia handed me her number for repair updates. "Try sleeping tonight," she said. "I'll do my best." "No," she replied gently. "Actually try." That evening, I sat alone inside the garage office long after closing time. For weeks, I kept thinking Claire destroyed my future. But slowly, painfully, I started wondering whether she only destroyed the version of me willing to accept less than I deserved. Then my phone vibrated. A known number. I answered cautiously. "Hello?" Emma Lewis whispered nervously, "Ethan, there's something about the ring you still don't know." Before I could answer, Emma breathed shakily into the phone. I heard traffic behind her and imagined her hiding somewhere to make the call. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I can't explain everything yet." Emma, stop doing that. Stop giving me pieces without the truth. You don't understand how bad this became. My chest tightened. Did Claire lie about the ring too? Emma stayed quiet for 2 seconds. Then she whispered, "Claire lied about almost everything." The call suddenly ended. I stared at my screen in silence while rain tapped against the garage windows. For the first time, anger started replacing heartbreak inside me. Emma asked me to meet her at a small coffee shop across town. When I arrived, she already looked terrified. "You came," she whispered. "You said Claire lied about everything." Emma wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "Because she did." I sat across from her slowly. "Then tell me the truth for once." She hesitated before speaking. "Claire started seeing Ryan over a year ago." Even though I already suspected it, hearing the words still hurt. "She kept telling herself she would choose one of you eventually," Emma continued. "But she never wanted to lose either life." I laughed bitterly. "So I was the backup plan." "No," Emma said quickly. "That's the messed up part. She actually loved you." I stared at her in disbelief. "You expect me to believe that?" "She said you made her feel safe." "That's exactly what she told me." Emma nodded sadly. "But Ryan made her feel important." The sentence explained everything. I leaned back quietly. "What about the ring?" Emma exhaled slowly. "Ryan bought Claire a huge engagement ring 3 months ago." My stomach tightened. "She hated it," Emma admitted. "Hated it." She called it cold and transactional. I remembered every overtime shift I worked to buy my ring. Every sacrifice. Every plan. "What happened to mine?" I asked. Emma looked embarrassed. "She kept it hidden." "Why?" "Because your ring meant something real to her." I almost laughed at the insanity of it. She cheated on me for a year but secretly treasured my ring? I know how crazy it sounds. "No," I said quietly. "It sounds selfish." Emma lowered her eyes. Then I remembered the woman at the restaurant. "The girl wearing my ring," I said carefully. "Who was she?" "Ryan's sister." I blinked. "What?" "She borrowed the ring during dinner as a joke. Everyone was teasing Ryan about marriage." For a moment I couldn't even speak. So Claire never gave the ring away. But somehow the truth hurt even worse. The ring became proof that Claire wanted love from me while chasing status from Ryan. "You know the worst part?" I asked softly. Emma looked at me carefully. "What?" "I spent weeks hoping there was some innocent explanation. There wasn't." "No," I agreed. "There really wasn't." Before leaving, Emma grabbed my wrist gently. "She's falling apart now." I pulled away slowly. That's not my responsibility anymore. 2 days later, a man named Nathan Cole visited the garage. "You Ethan Carter?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." "Nathan. I worked with Claire." Instant tension filled my chest. "What do you want?" "To clear my conscience." I crossed my arms. "That sounds dangerous." Nathan sighed heavily. "Claire lied constantly at work." "How?" "She told different stories depending on who she talked to." I stayed silent. "She told some coworkers you were emotionally controlling. Others thought Ryan was manipulating her." I felt physically sick listening to him. "She turned herself into a victim for both sides," Nathan continued. "Nobody knew what was true anymore." "Did Ryan know?" "At first? No." Nathan leaned closer. "But he knows now." Apparently Ryan discovered Claire secretly transferred money from him too. Expensive gifts disappeared. Bills showed purchases Claire blamed on assistants or co-workers. "She played both of you," Nathan said. "For different reasons." After Nathan left, I sat alone inside the garage office thinking about the woman I once planned to marry. For months I kept asking myself whether Claire ever loved me. Now I finally understood the real question. Did Claire truly love anyone besides herself? That night, Sophia stopped by to pick up her repaired car. "You look calmer," she said. "I think I finally stopped lying to myself." "That's usually painful." "It is." Sophia studied me quietly. But I'm starting to see things clearly." She smiled softly. "That matters." For the first time since everything collapsed, I believed her. Around midnight, someone knocked hard on my apartment door. I opened it slowly. Claire stood there crying uncontrollably. Mascara streaked down her face. Her hands shook while holding her jacket closed. "Ryan threw me out," she whispered. I stared at her silently. "He found out about the money," she continued. "He won't answer my calls anymore." The silence between us felt unbearable. Then Claire stepped closer desperately. For months I dreamed about hearing Claire beg for another chance. Now that moment finally arrived and all I felt was exhaustion spreading through my chest instead of love anymore. I looked at the woman who once felt like home and barely recognized her anymore. "Why are you here?" I asked quietly. Claire wiped her face with trembling fingers. "Because you're the only person who ever really cared about me. That didn't stop you from destroying me." "I know. You lied to me every single day." I was scared. I laughed bitterly. "You were greedy." She flinched like I slapped her. I made mistakes, she whispered. Mistakes happen once. You made choices for an entire year. Claire started crying harder. I didn't think everything would collapse this badly. The honesty in that sentence finally killed the last illusion I still carried inside me. She wasn't heartbroken because she hurt me. She was heartbroken because her other life failed. Then she reached for my hand desperately. Please, Ethan, she begged again. Please take me back. Claire kept showing up after Ryan abandoned her. Sometimes she waited outside the garage. Sometimes she sat in her car across from my apartment for hours. Every time I saw her, she looked smaller somehow. One afternoon, she approached me while I locked the garage entrance. Please talk to me, she whispered. We already talked. No, you yelled. There's a difference. I sighed tiredly. Claire, what do you want from me? You. The answer came too fast. I looked away immediately because part of me still reacted to her voice automatically. That scared me more than anger ever did. Claire stepped closer carefully. I know I ruined everything. Yes, I said quietly. You did. Tears filled her eyes again. My mom kept telling me security mattered more than love. I laughed bitterly. So you picked the richer guy. I thought I could have both. At least she finally sounded honest. The next evening, I discovered exactly where Claire learned that mindset. Margaret Donovan arrived at my apartment uninvited. You need to stop encouraging her, she snapped the second I opened the door. I'm sorry? She's embarrassing herself chasing you after everything with Ryan collapsed. I stared at her coldly. Your daughter cheated on me for a year. Margaret waved dismissively. And now she ruined her future because she couldn't commit to the better opportunity. The better opportunity. That was how she described another human being. She loved you, Margaret continued, but love doesn't pay for penthouses. I stepped aside from the doorway. You should leave. She could have had stability. She had stability, I replied sharply. She destroyed it herself. Margaret looked irritated instead of guilty. Claire always struggled making practical decisions. No, I said quietly. Claire struggled being honest. After she left, I sat alone in silence for nearly an hour. For the first time, I understood Claire completely. Not excused. Not forgiven. Understood. A few days later, Sophia visited the garage again. You look like your brain's fighting itself, she said while leaning against the counter. It is. Because of Claire? I nodded slowly. Sophia stayed quiet before asking, do you still love her? The question hurt because the answer wasn't simple. Part of me does, I admitted. Sophia smiled sadly. That doesn't mean you owe her another chance. I know. Love without trust becomes fear. The sentence stayed inside my head long after she left. That night, Claire knocked on my apartment door again. This time she held the engagement ring box in both hands. I found it in my car, she whispered. I stared at the box silently. Claire opened it slowly. You bought this for me. Yeah. I used to imagine wearing it every day. But you didn't. She started crying immediately. Can we start over? The pain in her voice sounded real. That made everything harder. Part of me remembered movie nights on the couch, road trips, lazy Sunday mornings, and all the tiny moments that once felt permanent. But another part remembered every lie. Every hidden message. Every fake excuse. Claire stepped closer desperately. I'll do anything. You already did everything. I was stupid. You were selfish. She lowered her head. I know. I took the ring box gently from her hands. For a second, we both stood there remembering the future we almost had. Then I closed the box softly. I loved you more than I loved myself, I admitted quietly. Claire cried harder. But I finally understand something now. She looked up hopefully. Loving someone isn't the same as trusting them. Her face collapsed completely. I can change, she whispered. Maybe you can. Then why are you giving up on us? Because there was no us left anymore. I touched the ring box once before placing it back into her trembling hands. I forgive you, I said softly. But I'll never belong to you again. Claire stood frozen in the hallway while I slowly closed the door between us. I expected relief afterward, but what I felt was grief mixed with freedom. For the first time in years, my future no longer depended on somebody else choosing me. The silence inside my apartment felt peaceful. I heard the news before I even saw the screen. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, and one message said it all. Ryan is finished. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. So it's over, I whispered to myself. Sophia called me right after. Her voice was soft, careful. Did you see it? She asked. I called her back immediately. It's real, right? I asked. Sophia said, yes. Investigators confirmed everything. Oliver didn't lie. I didn't feel happy. I just felt nothing. Sophia asked softly, what about Claire? She got what was coming, I said, but my voice didn't have strength. Social media destroyed her reputation. I saw posts, comments, screenshots everywhere. But I didn't smile. Revenge didn't feel like anything anymore. Sophia said, that's because you're healing, not hurting anymore. I stayed silent for a moment. I don't know how to do that, I admitted. Sophia replied, you already are. You just don't see it yet. I walked outside that evening, air feeling different. Lighter somehow. I pulled out the engagement ring from my drawer. I stared at it. You still keeping that? Sophia asked over the phone. I said, no. I think it's time to let it go. I sold it the next day. No hesitation. Sophia said quietly, that's your first real step forward. I didn't respond. But for the first time I didn't feel broken. Sophia asked, what now? I looked at her question and felt something shift inside me. I said, I don't know. I've never thought beyond revenge. Sophia replied, then start thinking about peace instead. I stayed quiet, letting her words sink in. I finally said, peace feels harder than revenge. Sophia laughed softly. Because revenge is just noise. I looked at the sky outside the window. I whispered, I don't want to be stuck there anymore. Sophia said, then don't be. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Something inside me felt quieter than before. Sophia asked again, are you ready to let it all go? I hesitated. I think I'm trying. Sophia said warmly, trying is enough for now. I exhaled deeply. I said, I don't recognize myself anymore. Sophia replied, that means you're becoming someone new. I smiled faintly for the first time in days. Then I asked, what if I fail at this too? Sophia answered, then I'll still be here. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. I sat back down, feeling lighter but uncertain. Sophia said, that's the beginning, not the end. I asked quietly, what do I do tomorrow? Sophia replied, life. Just live without looking back. I let her words stay in my mind. Then I whispered, it feels strange, not hating anymore. Sophia said softly, that's freedom. I stayed silent for a while. I asked, did she ever really love me? Sophia paused. Maybe. But not the way you needed. I nodded slowly, accepting something I resisted for too long. Then Sophia said the final words. Sophia looked at me and asked, what if your life didn't end when she betrayed you? What if it finally started? I froze, hearing her words echo inside me. I didn't answer right away. Sophia waited, not pushing me. I finally whispered, I don't know who I am without that pain. Sophia said softly, then you're about to find out. I looked at the dark sky through the window. And for the first time I wasn't afraid. Sophia asked again, are you ready to start over? I said quietly, maybe. I think I am. Sophia smiled in her voice, that's enough for now. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift permanently. Sophia's final words stayed with me as the night grew quiet. I realized my story wasn't ending here, it was just changing direction, and for the first time I was ready to keep going forward now forever. I wake up months later and realize my life doesn't feel like it used to. Daniel says, we need more space in the garage, business is growing fast. I reply, I never thought we'd get here. He laughs, you earned it, man. Mia visits later and says, you look different now. I ask, better or worse? She smiles, stronger. I nod quietly, I hope so. At work Daniel says, orders are doubling again. I respond, then we keep pushing. He adds, you finally stopped looking back. I say, I had to. One afternoon Mia says, Claire is still around, you know? I pause, I know. She continues, she lost everything. I answer, I didn't want that for her. Mia replies, but it happened anyway. Later I see Claire from a distance near the street outside the workshop. She whispers, do you hate me? I don't approach. I say, no, I don't hate you anymore. She looks down, I messed everything up. I respond, we both lived it differently. She asks softly, can I fix it? I shake my head, some things don't go back. She stands there watching me leave. I don't turn around. That evening Sophia calls and says, you sounded tired today. I answer, just thinking too much. She replies, or finally thinking clearly. I ask, what's the difference? She says, peace. We meet later and she says, you're not who you were when we met. I tell her, I'm trying not to be. She smiles, good. I ask, is that enough? She says, it has to be. Days pass and I feel change slowly settling in. Daniel says, you're not surviving anymore, you're building. I reply, I didn't know there was a difference. He says, now you do. Mia tells me, you finally laugh again. I respond, it feels strange. She says, it's supposed to. At night Sophia says, healing isn't linear. I ask, then what is it? She answers, choosing yourself again and again. I nod, I think I'm learning that. Months later we go to the beach. Waves sound like something new. Sophia holds my hand and says, you're quiet. I reply, I'm not running inside my head anymore. She asks, what changed? I say, I stopped believing love should hurt. She squeezes my hand, that's growth. I look at the ocean and say, I used to think I lost everything. She asks, and now? I answer, now I think I found myself again. She smiles, not bad for someone who was broken. I laugh softly, I was never broken. Just lost. She says, same difference until you heal. I look at her and say, I'm not afraid anymore. She asks, of what? I answer, losing myself for love. She nods, then you're finally ready. We stand together watching the waves and I feel steady for the first time in years. I whisper, I thought peace would feel like victory but it feels like silence. Sophia says, silence is where you finally hear yourself. I ask, do you think I'll ever forget everything that happened? She replies, no, but you won't need it to define you anymore. I nod slowly, that sounds impossible. She squeezes my hand, it only feels that way because you're used to pain. I look at the horizon and say, for so long, I thought love meant losing myself. Sophia answers, now you know better. I breathe in deeply and say, I want to keep building something real. She smiles, then keep choosing it every day. I glance at her and say, stay with me for a while? She says, I already am. The wind moves softly and I feel everything finally settling where it should be. Behind me, the past no longer calls my name and I don't turn around because there is nothing left there for me anymore. Only future waits ahead now quietly with hope and light growing. I realize now that healing is not a destination but a daily choice I keep making even when memories try returning again softly.